our inner workings of an architect's office, two of our customers, Fred Goebel from HOK and Michael Berg, our chapter president from 410 Architecture, are going to help us navigate their world.
Thank you. How are you today?
Good.
Well, welcome to the Mid-South. Mid-South means it's really cold in the winter and really hot in the summer. HOK is a very large firm. We have probably 18 domestic offices, a number of them overseas, and they all work linked together. So we're very big on standards. We're very big on trying to focus on a couple of market sectors. Almost all of that is commercial, institutional kind of clients that own and operate their buildings. Not exclusively so. The market today is such that even those kinds of clients have a lot of similarities with kind of the developer and speculative market. Needless to say, they're owners' representatives in big buildings. A lot of them have a construction background. A lot of them come out of retail and light commercial construction. Aggressive, fast pace, reliable. I think those are all kind of hallmarks of the businesses that we serve. Here in St. Louis, we're about 150 people. It also functions as the corporate headquarters for the company. So we have like health, we have personnel, legal, accounting for the entire organization. We're going to talk about a couple things that we'd like you to learn about. The various describe the type of management, how it's different, what everybody does. What does, in a large office, how does it work? Michael will talk about that related to a small office. The thing that's similar between the two is that sometimes a big office is a series of small offices put together. But we share common things, like we share production capacity, we share specifications, things like that. But to have the skills to work in a large office, really it's the same fundamentals, the same blocking, the tackling, the ability to follow standards and procedures that are serving you, whether you're in a small or large firm. Personally, I have been with smaller firms and managed small office with 4 or 5 people. But the fundamentals of that aren't different than the big project or working on one overseas. Generally, a big office works by having more structure, organization, and internal procedures. Not that smaller offices don't do that, but if I'm going to cooperate with our Dallas or Houston office or Chicago, which I do regularly, I expect them to follow the same procedures that we do here in St. Louis, and they're expecting me to deliver a product consistent with the corporate expectations for formatting, for content, for minimum standards of quality as we have. I write technical specifications every day. It's the only thing I do. I interface regularly with contractors. That's part of my job. It's in my job description to do that. This last year, you may be surprised that I've probably only had maybe 25 requests for personal meetings. If someone does call my office, there's no real filter there. If I have time to talk to you on the phone, I will. If not, then we'll set up an appointment. But that doesn't actually happen as frequently as one might think. So again, it's part of what I do. More people means more possible points of contact. That's an opportunity for you. It's also an obstacle for you, is to understand really how a decision is made. Architecture is a people business, both in our relations with the industry and with our colleagues. If somebody isn't returning your phone calls, you might be interested to know that that's more of a personal habit. It's not reserved for you. They're just as shitty as the rest of us. Honestly, I mean, but my difference is if my colleague in Chicago doesn't call me back within a reasonable amount of time, we're on the clock. We have production schedules. It's like building windows. I can't start on the next spec until this one's done. And I call their boss. You know, and I say, Lou, I can't get this moving. Please talk to Jim. If they're on the floor, I walk over to their desk and say, look, it's not a blocking tool. You know, if you can't answer me, I get it. But you can't let it go 2 and 3 days. In our firms, you know, people in the firm know their job very well and accomplish it effectively. That's our corporate speak. We expect that. We hold one another accountable to see that it happens. It doesn't matter if you're a drafter, if you're the principal, if you're the spec writer. We expect one another to know that it's got to get done on X date. If it can't get done, it doesn't help me to say it's not my fault. Nobody gives a darn about that. It doesn't matter whose fault. It's got to go out. It's got to be complete. We see that that happens. The big office gets big by focusing business. We have a couple of markets, predominantly healthcare, corporate headquarters, laboratory and science buildings, which actually takes us around the world, and correctional work. These are things that travel very well. When I say they travel, the expertise travels, and that's lodged within 3 or 4 people in each of the offices that do it. But we share common production, project architects, project interior designers. They're not necessarily specialists in that market type, although we have people who do interiors only for healthcare. You can only have that if you're big, because they're not doing it every day. So, if you have something very specialized, like we have our own facade consultants in New York, most firms can't afford to have that because they wouldn't use it often enough. We have successful projects. That's where products and manufacturers come in. If there's a problem in the construction site, it reflects on me. Owners don't necessarily blame me for it, but they're like, you're experts in this. How could you let this happen? They don't care that I didn't let it happen. They want it to be successful. That means good products, well supported by manufacturers with trained installers. If all that can't happen, you will get a call from me. It's not about me saying, well, the manufacturer has to know about the installer, but it doesn't count in the business, in construction, unless it can get on the wall, in the building, properly and work well. If it doesn't, something's got to change. So if we have a product that looks good on paper, we can't get it installed right, I can't use it. It's out. It's done. The designers won't go there. They'll find a different technology, etc. And that's not good for anybody. Good business, if things go smoothly, if people like you, if they like me, that's all they want. They don't really care about who shot who. Our structure is broken up into 3 parts. There are operational managers, there's accounting chief, they measure labor use and finances, there's a human resources leader, hiring staff and addressing staff. This has nothing to do with the project. This is what it takes to run a 150-person office. Practice group leadership is involved in marketing and specialized building types. So we have healthcare, corrections, a couple other. You could be in big box stores or something like that, but they're specialists that know that market type. They know the dynamics of it. They know how to program the buildings. They know what the ceiling heights want to be, the floor construction, and yes, they even know what the floor coverings want to be. You'd be surprised to know that our leading principals in corrections regularly have a discussion about what the right finish is in gang showers in a jail. That's serious business. If you're running a jail and that doesn't work right, it's not like you're going to call somebody in to fix it, once every 3 months. That is bad for business. Then there are departmental leaders that deal with things like lighting, interiors, landscape architecture, and those are specialists, not just in their discipline, but the structure for corrections. What's the right bay size? What's the construction type? Even apartments, if it's light wood construction, what's the optimal system? And we're lucky that we have our own engineers that know about that kind of thing. In the structure, the project management side, where you interface, where I work, always has a principal. That's a thought leader. That's someone who knows about laboratory sciences. They don't know about it just in the United States, but like in the work that we did overseas in Saudi Arabia, you have to know what laboratory science looks like in Europe, what it looks like in Asia. Because the people who hire you in the United States, they don't care if you work for St. Louis University. They want to know whether you work for Harvard, for Cambridge. You know the name of the operational director for the scientific laboratory in Shenzhen, China. That's what gets their attention. It's not whether you can produce technical specifications. They assume that you're good at what I do. They don't assume that you don't know what type of drywall to use or how thick the floor slabs will be. they assume that you know all that already. The project manager for our organization is the one who's directly responsible for the organization staff, for the delivery of services, for the profitability, for the contracts. If something doesn't go well, they're gone. It's a tough business. People in that role have done my job, they've done technical drawings, they maybe have been in sales, maybe they've even been working in these markets as a specialist for facility management in that building type. But that's about running the business. That's not so much about selecting products or detailing drawings, but they have to help make good decisions. Project designer, they give form to the overall design. In a large office, oftentimes they're the idea person around how the building is actually programmed. When they start working on a project, that's all they're doing. They're not working on generally 3 at a time. They're working on 1 at a time, they're focused on that building, and they're designing something. They have help. They're going to have junior designers or less experienced designers. Sometimes they have more experienced designers, but they're the one who have that burning desire to focus on everything design. They're supported by project architects. They prepare drawings, specifications, not so much, but they support the designer and figure out what the technology of the wall is after the designer says, I want it to be a metal shingled skin in copper, or a fiber cement siding or something. So they're very good about figuring out what that common wall section is. They want to be innovative, but not to the bleeding edge of technology. That's not what big firms are about. Interior designers, they select material and systems. They're not expected to know the technical details of it. Generally, they give a specification writer the products, the systems, and we put it in the technical language of the specifications. The architects, sometimes in large offices, they inhabit defined areas such as the elevators, the stairs, the exterior, the interior. We have enough work that they get very good at that. Some would say they get pigeonholed into doing that. We try not to let that happen, because for every professional in our office, there has to be a career path. That doesn't mean getting a 2% raise for 15 years. If they're not advancing in their careers, they will look hard and fast at that, and frankly, so will the office. We can't have senior production architects that prepare drawings that get paid $90,000 a year. It doesn't work like that in our business. So having experienced staff that makes a difference in terms of productivity and detailing and design, we want them to carry over from one building type to another. So if you've been an architect that's done 15 years in healthcare, that's your sweet spot. That's what you're good at. Within healthcare, quote unquote, there's all kinds of things. There's early childhood centers, there's behavioral health, there's all kinds of diagnostic areas. So these are big blocks of space, and within that, there could be play areas, there could be gymnasiums, even in correctional work, there's that kind of thing. So it's not necessarily negative for someone's career. The interior staff sometimes researches, selects, and documents the materials and systems. Our office has a pretty extensive catalog and library, but it's much, much smaller than it was 5 or 10 years ago. Specification writer, that's me, prepares the technical specs and supports the teams. I'm not officially a member of any team. If you ask me how often I've looked at a catalog this year, that's the first 4 months, it's probably 5 times. Almost everything I do having to do with specifications is online. It's electronic. I don't keep files when I'm done with the project. I have no hard copy files. All my handwritten notes, work process, it gets thrown away. If it's not electronic, I can't use it. I go online probably 5 times a day. My average time on a website is no more than 15 minutes. By the time I'm involved, I know what I'm looking for. The designers have selected the technology. It's about business productivity. It's like making windows. The faster and more competently I can make windows, the happier everyone is. My staff, our clients, our management. We do have QA/QC coordinators. They check all the deliverables. That wasn't always HOK's reputation. It's easier in the electronic age, but it's also more demanding. I mean, we do check sets electronically. We have tools that when I make a comment on a batch PDF, I can find just the comments that were made. Owners' comments, they get reviewed, they get commented back on, we track the changes. Again, it's all electronic. If it's not electronic today and computerized, then it's not HOK. It's not the way big offices can afford to work. And from St. Louis or from the other offices, it's not uncommon to work with specialists from Washington, D.C. on lead and sustainability for the other offices where they have a specialty in certain building types. So it's very integrated. The approach to the project builds on the expertise and knowledge of market types. Sometimes we do things that are one-offs. It's a labor of love. We usually lose money on those, but don't say that. Don't write that down. But sometimes there's a learning curve. God help us if we have the learning curve on the same building type twice in a row. The office management will sort that out. The teams know it. You know, once you have learned how a small warehouse building goes together, you know, for God's sakes, don't forget what the framing is. Don't forget what the facade is. Don't forget what's affordable within a developer's pro forma. They expect you to know it. Our office expects you to know it. And if you're good at it, if you can do it regularly, it's a career path. You know, there's a lot of satisfaction in that. But you know, the architect in a big office is not like the person whose time is unaccounted for. It's about productivity. It's about efficiency. It's about creative ideas. The marketplace in our office sorts itself out for creativity and design ability. The specialty ability and knowledge is lodged usually within programmers, and like we have healthcare programmers, we have science and technology lab specialists. My specialty up until about 4 years ago when I started writing specs full time was not any of the things about design. It was helping principals be productive with staffing, with financing, with contracts. You know, I was the person at the elbow of the principal figuring out what we should propose for high-rise buildings in Turkey, or figuring out what a lab proposal in Saudi Arabia might be for a secondary client, and reading those 600 pages of documents from the clients that were oftentimes overlapping, conflicting, and to prepare a model schedule with which the principals could then evaluate time, labor, staff requirements, payment plans, basically working the analytics of a project to figure out whether there was a chance of making money or not. And in those cases, we would use products, usually from American manufacturers that had European bases, where quality was reliable, delivery was a possibility. So there are lots of things in big offices you can be very good at in a narrow focus, but you have to sell to that. Now we get to products and materials in the big office. You know, a lot of that carries over from previous projects. That's how you get to be specialists in building types. In large offices, we rely on durable products and systems. Most of the cases for the large firms with big projects, clients own, operate, manage, and maintain. Some of them, like healthcare or corrections, you can't go in and do repairs very easily. So you're looking for durable quality. That doesn't mean just the product in the field. It means the delivery system, the interconnected network by which manufacturers create products, support them, make sure that their installation installers know what they're doing, know how the accessories are used, know what the full features are, and how they interface with other systems. If you can communicate that to your offices, that you're working with architecturally in a big firm, you've got a chance. If you can't get that product on the building correctly, completely, and it performs, architects aren't going to use it. You know, we're looking for quality and reliability of the manufacturer. It matters a lot. Is their supply chain and their interface with their dealer and supplier and installer network. If you're not doing the kind of training about your product with the installers, and maybe you install it yourselves, then it's a problem. If it can't get on the building right, then ultimately it won't get used. We do try to keep up with national trends in design and technical performance. Like recently, there was a discussion about new OSHA rules related to silica. Little hint: if I get an email about a product from a manufacturer and it says follow up for more information, I click it. I'm like, okay, well, let's see what it is. And for some of them, I may know the manufacturer's representatives here locally, and I call them and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, what did you get? So hint, if your manufacturers send those kind of blasts out, sign up for them as if you were a user. Go online, in your own website, fill in your own name. And when I download a guide spec, which I do all the time, if a manufacturer has that, I use it. Download it. See how easy it is to get at it. If it's not really easy, and I know what I'm looking for, I don't linger, I move on. But you have to help us maintain that information. Big offices get big by maintaining their dominance in a marketplace. We're looking for products that are commonly available around the country. And having a deep capability within CAD and technology, meaning information about detailing how the product is used correctly, is very important. Generally, when it comes to product specifications, I expect, as our spec writer, that the teams, the project architect, the designers, are picking the technology to build it. I'm not going to tell them if they should use a fiber cement panel or a metal panel. I'm like, dude, you have to open up a manufacturer's guide. Just Google, right? Fiber cement in Google, and see which 4 manufacturers come up. And you can take the top one, but that's an old Amazon trick. Don't do that. Scroll down 2 pages and see who still emerges there. So don't get lulled by this internet that, the first 3 up there paid the biggest amount of money to get 6,000 likes in China. What's that all about? That's not how we pick products. Look at the technical performance. Don't get lulled by that kind of BS. It doesn't, it's like, okay, you could do that in 1994. This is 2019. Who's deluded by that these days? Anyway, I expect them to make a pick. We have some standards for key products and systems. We do have a lot of experience with interiors, exteriors, roofs, etc. for the building types that we serve. We typically do have a basis of design product in mind. My job is not to funnel all the work to a manufacturer. It's to provide equity and fairness within the construction industry bidding our project. At some level, all products are bid. I can't help that. It's the way your industry works, our industry works. And even if I don't bid them, I may have a basis of design. I may even say no substitutions. Guess what? I really don't make that decision. When it gets to the contractors, they're like, well, thanks, Fred. We'll take it from here. So if they choose something that's really off base technically, if we have windows going on a high-rise that are rated for residential because someone wanted to make it cheaper, they will get a letter from our office saying it won't perform, don't do this. Well, that usually is enough to have people think about it. If I open a PRA2 master spec, which I use for spec writing, it's got great links. I can go in any of the manufacturers and they'll have a couple or up to 14 or 15 different manufacturers. I'm not going to list 14 manufacturers. I'm going to try to find ones that legitimately have a project capability. I'm going to pick a basis of design. That's where all the technical detail comes from, as well as from our own internal guides, as well as from the current PRA2 master spec, and we move on from there. Hard copy catalogs, not such a big deal. Primary sources are the guide specs. I mine those. I don't use any of them straight up. They may tell me a lot about the product. They tell me 0 about installation. They tell me 0 about testing or quality management. That's not acceptable. It won't fly. Anyway, communications of the product, something of interest. We need, people who are generally knowledgeable, selling to people who are already knowing what they're looking like. It's a people business, and be polite. Some suggestions, okay, the cold call, CSI is always good. I attend all those that I can, and so, you got to know your technical facts and local costs, and you have to be realistic. Michael?
That's me.
I think this is you. Thank you very much.
I'm Michael Berg. I run a small firm. We're 7 people. We're about 2 blocks east of here. Fred's firm is one of our clients. We sometimes work for larger firms. We're a minority business enterprise. So sometimes we get hired to do pieces because they need to satisfy a requirement. And believe it or not, sometimes we actually get hired by larger firms because we can help them do a small thing that they may not have time for, or that we need to add capacity for. Because they need somebody with some skills that have already been proven. If there's a theme to my comments, it's going to be diversity. There may be some consistent through lines for large firms. Small firms run the gamut. And I grabbed some data off of the AIA's last firm survey. And that's a really good way to look at architecture as a profession, as an industry, and see how it breaks down. The majority of firms are my kind of firm. About half of the architects work at my kind of firm or smaller. But when you look at the dollars, it's reversed. We probably handle the minority of construction dollars. So unfortunately, bang for your buck as a sales rep, you're going to have to work harder to make dollars off of our kinds of projects. But there's maybe a silver lining. Because of this diversity, because all the small firms can be anything and everything in between what I'm going to talk about, my experience is really only limited to my experience. So different small firms will operate differently. Sole practitioners, about half of those small firm architects, so maybe a quarter of professionals, are really sole practitioners. They're 1- and 2-person offices. I'll put offices in quotes, right? So these are folks they're doing houses, they're doing tenant fit out, they're doing small consulting, and maybe they're on their own. Maybe they're semi-retired. Maybe they're just starting out. They're young people doing decks and patio additions. Maybe they're working out of their house. Sometimes you call that number and it's their home phone. The kids answer. There's a dog in the background. That's sort of the one extreme end of how architects do it. And how do you reach those kinds of folks? A lot of these folks probably aren't in AIA. AIA is very expensive, and what we get out of it doesn't always match up with the enormous fees that they charge. So an AIA presentation, just be aware you may be missing a large segment of the architectural population. Firms like CSI are better at National Organization of Minority Architects, maybe the Association of Licensed Architects, who, in my mind, are kind of a bunch of curmudgeons who just hate the AIA and would rather pay $85 a year. But they do actually get together, and they do have programs. They have a magazine. I mean, there are ways to reach those diverse professions. That's not my experience, so I'm going to move on to what I'm going to call small firms. Once you get to the point where you have an office, I think our structure starts to look a lot more like larger firms. So I've broken it down to just a real simple little hierarchy. Now the thing is, the smaller the firm, I think, the more these levels start to mush together. So in reality, probably there's a 50% overlap between all these lines in the chart. So on leadership, I'm doing half of the things below me. I'll say below, but really, these charts should all be flipped over because we're all supporting the production side. We're giving them the information they need to do what they do. We typically have one office location. We're real full-time employees. We're corporations. We're S-corps. We're LLCs. We're PCs. We have the same kinds of administrative needs and the same technology that the big firms do. So starting with the folks in the firm, I'll start with me. So I'm the principal. I'm one of 2 principals in our firm, and we lead the firm. My partner and I divide up all the duties that are support and administrative duties in the firm. So my partner is the payroll and invoicing person. He runs QuickBooks. I am the HR person. So if somebody wants to come in for an interview, that's me. I do technical stuff. I write specs. I do a lot of kind of quality assurance, but less quality control. My partner does most of the design. So he leads the design effort. He does sort of the last quality control check before it goes out the door. And we overlap dramatically. The next folks that work for us are what most of the AIA kind of breakdown calls project managers. And these are really the guys who make everything happen. So we have 2 project managers for our 7-person firm, and they each are the masters of their projects. They come to principals for help, decisions, they ask questions, and we have to provide them timely answers so that they can get on with doing what they're doing. But they are the day-to-day client contact. My partner and I are marketing contacts, and we are support people. We kind of work on both ends. The project managers rely on some folks to actually, what the AA calls project architects, who actually kind of implement things. They're not solely production people in a small firm, but they're also not doing project management, perhaps. It sounds strange sometimes to people. The project manager is kind of a more experienced role than project architect, because the architect always sounds like it's supposed to be top of the heap. In most firms, a project architect is kind of a young person sort of role. The decision makers on projects for product purposes are the leaderships and the principals and the project managers. The designers are pretty young and they're still kind of learning. Oh, I should point out the support folks are optional, right? So I've got receptionist, bookkeeping, office manager. They may or may not exist, and that may or may not happen at the leadership level. Project managers tend to be younger folks than the leaders. They tend to be more diverse. And they're implementing whatever standards the firm has. And the firm may have standards and it may not. We are unfocused, a lot of us. We take work where we can get it. Sometimes we're doing work we've never done before. And in the case of our firm, we have done, every project is kind of, with a few exceptions, it's kind of the first time we've ever done that kind of project. We sell ourselves with, the contact that we have, the focus that, on their particular needs that we can bring, and not so much on we are subject matter experts in giving you the cookie cutter thing that your industry may need. We recognize that you are unique, and we think that we can serve that. Small firms do most stuff in-house. Compared to larger firms, which tend more to be multidisciplinary, they have engineering in-house perhaps, structural engineering, mechanical engineering. Smaller firms tend to be single discipline firms, where either architects or interior designers or engineers. But because of that, on the architect and the interior design side, we tend to do everything ourselves, whether or not we have experience. Our budgets sometimes don't support an outside consultant. And our clients don't expect it. Our clients don't want to pay for it. They want somebody to tell them what to do and give them a reasonably serviceable product, which puts us in an awkward position sometimes. So we have to make some decisions on things that we may not really fully understand. But in our case, because we're doing so many things for the first time, we don't have a lot of past experience. So when you can tell us things like, this is what we see a lot of firms doing right now, that's helpful for us. That gives us some idea that what we're asking, the crazy thing we're asking about, is not going to be totally dangerous for us to try and do with your product. Or if you tell us conversely that I've never seen that before, that's valuable information. I don't want to be the first guy ever to do this thing with your product. This is our office, and that's the front desk, and nobody sits there. Somebody used to sit there. A few years ago, we had somebody who sat there, and that person would, answer the phones and make sure guests were comfortable in the conference room and manage samples and help us with marketing. That's not a full-time position for a small firm. So Almost every small firm I know, after the recession, that position vanished. So leadership handles that. Everybody kind of answers the phones now, and like I said, we're doing all the administrative tasks ourselves. So if we look a little haggard sometimes, or we don't get back to you, that's part of the reason why. The other thing is that all our offices got smaller in the recession. And a lot of big firms, what it looks like is they cram more people into the same space. Well, the same thing happened in a small firm. We were cramming more people into the same space, and that squeezes out things like libraries. Right? So I'm sure you guys are finding that your samples go back in the car with you. They don't land at the office and stay there like they used to. Same thing with binders, same thing with brochures. All of that stuff has to earn its keep because there just is no place to put it. The library in my office is that black shelf right there. That's it. That's all there is. People have some stuff at their desks, but by and large, that's all the material we keep. And so we pay a lot of attention to what we keep, which is not to say that we're not open to new things. We cull that shelf regularly, but we only have need of samples for certain things. A lot of things we're comfortable with, we don't need to have a physical piece. And if your company is the kind of company that once they get our name on a list, just automatically sends us a sample box, that's going in the trash. I just don't have any place to put it. It drives me nuts when we get stuff like that unsolicited because we have no place to put it, it's a waste. And then we do frequently call you and please come and get your samples now that we're done with them. I manage specifications so that I don't have too much samples kicking around the office. And I don't want to store them long term. I'll take a picture of them, but I don't need them. Firms our size, I think, do lots of different kinds of projects. They tend to be low-rise commercial. Sometimes folks come in and they assume that architects do, newer product firms, maybe assume that architects do a lot of new construction and very little renovation. It's probably more like 50-50 for us. But it is also low-rise. So I get a tremendous amount of interest from people selling switch glass. I don't use a lot of switch glass. I don't do a lot of curtain wall. If I'm doing 2- and 3-story wood frame alongside my 10 fit out and restaurant work, yeah, I mean high performance curtain wall is interesting technically, but it's probably not. You don't see it on the website. It's probably not something that we use a lot of. And as Casey mentioned in the first one, not everything that we do is on the website, but all the stuff we're really proud of is on the website. And there may be some consulting things hidden around that you don't know about, but by and large, we are showing you as much as possible of what we do that we want to do more of. So, we are definitely doing different kinds of projects. Sometimes people are surprised that we do residential. We do both commercial and residential. A lot of people's expectation is that a firm is one or the other. But we do that, and lots of small firms do that. Sometimes we'll do single family and multifamily. We tend not to do cookie cutter spec type things. That's, in my mind, a specialization. Firms who do spec houses, that seems to be all that they really do, and they make a lot of money churning it out. We tend to do highly customized things that take a lot of time. And because of that, though, every project is a decision point. So we want to rely on past successes, but we also are constantly looking to evaluate and find ways to do it better. If there's one defining characteristic for people like me who are running firms this size, it's abject terror. For us, every project is kind of high risk, low reward. The reward is I get another project. It's not a huge profit margin. If we wanted to make a lot of money, we would probably have to work at a firm that did a lot of the same things over and over again. Because we're doing a lot of customized stuff, we are hoping for a good financial outcome, but mostly we're hoping for a really good project and a happy client and the next fun project. And I think people who come to work for us often come from a big firm background, and they may chafe at some of those procedures and rules that they feel like have held them back, for instance. And what we offer them is maybe you can come up with your own procedures. You tell us, what are we doing better that we should be doing better? And we can implement those changes very rapidly. But we may not have tons of standards for them to rely on. So there's definite sort of balance between discomfort and freedom and flexibility. But we do rely on you guys for quality help, getting the right product on our jobs that will keep us out of trouble. I can't stress enough also that we need help with costs. Because our clients are sometimes doing their thing for the first time, they're not clients that build things routinely. Even if they're developers, they may be first-time developers, or maybe they're coming to development after having been in real estate for decades or whatever. We really need help understanding what your product costs versus what the competition costs. Or if your product is kind of new, what am I going to see when this goes out to bid? Am I going to get shocked? Are people going to freak out because your product, while it saves some steps in labor, is different enough that nobody's going to actually price it appropriately? That gets us in trouble a lot. So I'll use integrated sheeting as an example, like the zip system sheeting. So plywood got a waterproof barrier on it, and it's all glued together. It comes out. It's all over the place. My problem is that for a few years, it's not so much now, but for a few years, when I would call it out, I'd get pushback because the line item price on that sheeting was higher, much higher than the plywood sheeting before, or even the plywood sheeting plus the tieback or whatever we put on the outside of it. And while I knew from the rep that this should work, that it should save money, there was no way for me to convince the people who were actually doing the pricing that that was the case. It ends up being a problem for us. We have to go back, we have to revise, it costs us time and money, and then I wish I had not done that on the next job. Having cost information that's convincing is absolutely key, especially if we're doing something that is somewhat new or somewhat innovative. And being able to convince, and I will put you in the room with somebody, contractor, if you can make the case, but being able to gently convince a contractor that there is a way for them to save money, this way for them to save money, doing it with this product is really, really helpful. I can't make that. I can't close that deal on the contractor side. The contractor dead set against it. It's changing their pricing strategy. There's nothing I can do. And we don't typically have a cost estimator. It's not in the budget. We have to do that stuff ourselves. Contractor substitutions are a thing. That happens a lot, in part because of issues like that. So talking to us about things that we should expect from the contractor is helpful to keep us out of trouble. The emphasis in quality at small firms, because of the nature of our projects, we're under time constraints and fee constraints, and so sometimes that pushes whatever may happen on the side of developing sound office standards that may push all that aside. So small firms may not have standards. They may have standards that really just extend back to the last successful project, and let's do it like that. So we're convincible that there's a better way, but we're also nervous about trying something new. And be patient with us. But we really do need your advice. Any questions for either of us? Yeah.
From my perspective, I'm trying to offer innovative products. How do you successfully innovate, learn, and then remember? How do you do that?
Well, innovation is a challenge. I mean, I think in terms of how HOK views it, I think we're looking for innovative appearance, innovative use, combination of use from certain market sectors to other market sectors. There's always the bloody edge of technology. We do get some information about products that, for example, in our Midwestern region come out of the very dry Southwest. And product reps, they sell it hard, and they're big companies, you know. But every once in a while, something goes wrong, and it's a big lesson learned. In the past, it's been things like gypsum drywall in Louisiana that turned out to be corrosive, used on a lot of projects. Those are cautionary tales, and it drives companies like ours to say, you know what, we're not going to do that. Some people, like, for example, there's an innovation with magnesium oxide boards. Haven't used it, seen literature on it, maybe it'll become a thing someday, but my knowledge of it is that it's only sourced from China. I'm not ready to go there. I'm certainly not going to have a $500 million project in Wayne County, Michigan, rely on a product that may have all the testing, but I have this unsettled feeling about it. In any case, you know, I think we rely on sort of ASTM testing, performance testing, moisture, vapor, you know, things like that that help us understand whether the product is ready. The market sector that's really, I think the one that embraces that is those builder developer clients where they're building for their own account. They build it, they own it, they manage it, they control it, and they have the biggest benefit from the innovation first use of those kind of products. It's generally not the kind of hospital systems or governmental agencies that would want to be in that area. But design-wise, appearance-wise, that's a big deal. There we are willing to take some risks, like ETFE roofing, things that we might use in stadiums, you know, Atlanta Airport, the big covered canopies, things like that.
You know, our clients don't want to take a ton of risk. I mean, almost that time. We have 5 minutes left. So our clients don't want to take a lot of risk, only because they haven't done it before. They don't have a large portfolio of properties to manage. So things like, you know, this is gonna save you money in the long run. If it's a developer, long run may not be their priority. And while we may think it's a great idea, we're never going to convince them that our values should be their values. So we innovate when we can because we can. Because it's kind of easy for smaller firms to innovate, so long as we understand from you what the risk is going to be. Because we cannot take chances. I mean, every mistake that goes to litigation is potentially firm ending, you know, even one. So we really have to be careful and want to see something that's been proven, you know, not in Italy, but it's been proven somewhere where we can point to and say, yeah, those guys do it. It works well. Let's do it. Probably one more question.
Fred kind of addressed this with, you know, looking at, don't think we're saying pops on Google, but I actually had an architect tell me one time we were talking about acoustical tile, commodity kind of product. But he said the software we use, honestly, Armstrong comes up before USG, so I click on it. And we have Armstrong. Is that something that, can you comment on that? I mean, like I said, like an architect told me, I take the one that comes up out.
Yeah. You know, I think when we come to particularly interior products, I have to admit our designers pick them based on the appearance that they're looking for. Generally, they'll have, like, whether it's carpets or ceilings, you know, markets that they serve that are marketed that way. Generally, if it is an Armstrong product, typically it appears in our manufacturer list of things as the basis of design. Then within the specification, it'll list 2 or 3 other manufacturers. And being the basis of design doesn't mean usually that it can be used straight up, because even the basis of design oftentimes has options, accessories, and other pieces that go with it that aren't standard in the line. And, you know, we ask that those things be part of the proposal because it has to be a complete system. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the selected product is the one that gets picked. And then I always say to people, you know, remember, we may pick something, but it depends a lot on the relationship between the trade contractor, the installer, the manufacturer, and the general contractor about how things are priced. I'm not naive enough to think that every general contractor gets the same price from every installer based on their own business history. You know, again, my job is to make sure that we're clear about what the product is and how it's performed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.